everybody, I'm Claire, and welcome to our new segment, Rare with Claire, where we interview rare advocates. This is Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name is Sarah Mumper. I have McCune Albright Syndrome. I am 24 years old, and I'm from California.
So tell us a little bit about your diagnosis. When were you diagnosed, and what was your diagnosis process like?
So I was actually diagnosed when I was 2.5. So that whole process is not something that I am privy to myself, but I've had many conversations with my mom just about the process that she went through. Both my parents had to go through to get me diagnosed. We actually have this whole joke in my family that we were diagnosed by an anesthesiologist. And we had gone in a couple of times to try to get certain tests done, things like that. And just based on my birthmarks that were already showing at that time, he was like, "Hey, I think your daughter has this," and literally gave them a little photocopy of McCune Albright syndrome from like a medical book, which at the time that's as much information as they had on it. And after a couple further tests, things like that, that's exactly what happened. And I just remember my mom saying the most difficult part was not knowing for the first few months of like what I had. And actually there was a nurse that told her that I had NF, which is like neurofibrosis, which is actually a very scary thing for a parent to hear, because that disease itself, you tend to have like a very difficult childhood, and sometimes it ends with the child not living past like 3 years old. So my mom was mortified, terrified, all the same, and unfortunately, like had a breath of fresh air when we found out that that wasn't the case. And so for me, technically, I didn't really understand what I had probably until I was actually interested in learning what I had when I was probably like 10, when I had to start using a wheelchair.
So what are some positives and negatives about your diagnosis? Like with our hypophosphatasia, my mom can turn her feet backwards, which is definitely positive because she loves showing it off. What are some that you think are cool about your disease?
Yeah. Well, because of my disease mainly affects my bones, I have used a wheelchair for about 10 plus years now. And it's really benefited me when we go to like Disneyland, or if I go to concerts or things like that. So my family is very big on Disney, and being in California, we're from Northern California. So we would at least every other year go to Disneyland. And as me and my siblings became adults, we kind of took charge on like a annual trip to Disneyland, which, you know, I'm trying to get my boyfriend into doing now with me too. Obviously not right now with COVID, but the perks of being able to go to the front of the lines and seeing how that has ebbed and flowed a little bit. It's been nice because they've been able to kind of tailor it to be more accessible around there. I mean, still, obviously, there's limitations, and now our waits are a little bit longer than they used to. But like for me, it's fun because I mean, it's nice to see the inclusivity that they're trying to bring to it. So that's been something that's been really cool to be a participant of. When I was actually just, I want to say 6 months after being in the wheelchair, the Sacramento Ballet puts on an annual Nutcracker every year. And my friend, Taryn, had always been in it, probably since she was like 6. She was always into dancing and theater and all of those things. And I was spending the night at her house, and they were like, "Well, we're gonna go to the Nutcracker open casting and all this stuff." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. Like, let me go." And we didn't think that I would be able to do it because of obviously the wheelchair and the limitations that comes with that. But they actually said like, "Oh, do you want to audition as well?" And I was like, "Well, I can't," because to me it was very evident like I can't be a dancer if I'm in a wheelchair. And is really amazing for them to say like, oh, like that's not a problem. I think that was like the very first time like seeing and hearing something like that for such a big production was kind of shocking to me. And they actually had a boy who uses a walker, but in the show have him use kind of like their old timey wheelchair to use around for the performance and stuff. And so that's pretty much what I did. And my first year that I started with them, we were just in the prologue. So just the very beginning where it's like, maybe on stage for 15 seconds. And my whole family made a big deal about it. We had family come up. We had friends go and see the show when I would be in it. And it was literally like 5 seconds of me just like going across the stage. And that was it. But it was the coolest thing because it's such a huge production that you just never would have thought. And then after being with them for a couple of years, I think it was like my 3rd or 4th year being with the Sacramento Ballet and doing that, they opened up a part in the party scene for me to be able to be included in that as well. So that was really incredible. And just, I mean, an amazing example of just how it only takes one, in this case, 2 people to really change the mindset of the people around you to really make it feel inclusive, which is really amazing to see, especially for such a big thing, because like the Nutcracker is like traditions for families to go see. And for me, I've never seen anybody with a disability on stage. And so to me, that's like a very, you know, you go and you watch movies and you go to watch shows and you always are like, oh, they don't really look like me, but they kind of do. But like, you just find whatever you can grasp onto that's relatable. And for me to feel like I can be that for somebody else was just very empowering and something that made me feel very comfortable about my diagnosis, because like for me, it was really hard. I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be seen as any different than my friends. I struggled a lot with my like body image, especially through middle school, like any girl, but to the degree where like I have extra hardware. So for me, that was really difficult to kind of see past all of that. And even into high school, that was kind of an eye opener that like, oh, like people actually like me for me. It doesn't matter what it shows on the outside and things like that. So there have definitely been some negatives to my diagnosis. I mean, when I first started applying to jobs, it was really hard. It was hard to not know whether or not it was because of my disability that they didn't want to hire me, or it was hard not to think that, because when I would have a phone interview before an in-person interview, I had better chances of getting an offer back versus the ones where I just went in initially. So that was very difficult at first. But then getting into the work field and working my job and things like that, it was something that was actually very empowering to the work environment that I was in, not having to worry about how different I would be treated. And it was kind of the same thing when I got into dating as well. And just the how like, when do you tell somebody, oh, hey, I have a wheelchair, if if you don't meet them in person and you do the online dating or anything like that, when's the right time if you don't put pictures up and things like that. So that's been its own challenge. But I take it as it comes, and I've learned to let myself wallow in the bad parts of it when it happens, because everything good that comes out of it is so much better and so worth celebrating so much more.
That's so empowering. And I think everybody, whether it's just a mild rare disease or a severe rare disease, everybody really struggles with getting the news and being like, oh, it makes us different, but really our differences is what we should celebrate.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think one of my favorite things too. I love concerts. I love going to concerts.
Oh my God, same. I love concerts.
That's the one that's I think the biggest hardship right now during COVID is I can't go to a concert and see my favorite band. But I love rock, especially. That's kind of like my genre, like alternative rock and stuff like that. Some pop just depending on the artist. But I had always gone to rock shows and like seen people crowd surf and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that would be so cool, but I could never do that. And it was so funny because actually, I want to say it was 2 years ago. Yeah, just about 2 years ago, I actually had somebody come up to me, just a stranger at a concert with me and my friend. We were in the main pit of the venue, and we were trying to make our way to the front, and this guy comes up to us and he goes, "Hey, like, do you want to crowd surf?" And I was like, "What did he just say?" She's like, "He wants to know if you want to crowd surf." And I was like, no way, like absolutely, that would be so cool. And I just remember him going like, okay, like just let us know when you want to do it. And I was just like, okay, like just so that way we all don't get kicked out, like let's at least wait till like the last song. So we waited until the last song and was getting ready to start, and he comes up, he goes, "Are you ready?" And I was like, yeah. And I put my brakes on my wheelchair, and him and this other guy, like just these two bulky guys, literally just lifted my chair, and I got to crowd surf. And it's really cool. I have a whole picture and everything, and it was amazing. The band loved it. They were like, I had the lead singer pointed and singing to me. He had their band photographer like take pictures of me, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I feel so famous. So it's definitely, I can definitely say there's been more positives than negatives, but I also think it's just mindset too. If you put yourself in a good mindset of it, good things will come. Definitely allow yourself to have those lows, but also embrace when even just the little things, because they can lead to a lot bigger experiences for sure.
Yes. And what does a regular day in your life look like? Do you have any hobbies that you love to do, or just a normal routine that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Well, before COVID, I should say, you know, I work a regular 8 to 4, I guess in this case, job. I work for a high school, and I used to go in regularly. Fortunately, I'm able to work from home and still do that. Um, I live with my boyfriend and his family, and it's us, his dad and stepmom, his little brother, and then, of course, our dog, who she's just the sunshine and rainbows in my life. So, you know, get up, take her out, take care of her, get ready for the day, come home when I'm not working. Weekends, we usually try to do something fun, whether it's go out and eat somewhere new, or actually like go to some place, like whether it's Monterey or something like that. Otherwise, just chill. I'm actually kind of like a homebody, and love binge watching shows, and I'm a big like movie watcher too. So any chance I get or any excuse I have, I definitely do that. But I'm very big on art, so that's kind of like my free time away from like work and all the boring stuff that I have to do. And that's something that I've always done, actually for several years now. And I've been able to kind of put it into like a glorified hobby and like sell some stuff and whatnot. So that's been really cool.
Is that